Welcome, everybody, to DNS Unfiltered. I'm joined today by the fearless CTO of DNSFilter, Timothy TK Keanini. Did I say that right? Keanini.
Yeah, close enough.
Tell me, what is it?
You say all the vowels. It's Hawaiian, so it's Keanini.
Keanini. So
Yep.
we call him TK.
hmm
So TK, before we dive into, we're coming up on the end of the year, and we're thinking about 2025 and what we should expect in the tech landscape. And I'm curious, before we get into those predictions, kind of a little bit about your backstory, because you have a rich history in tech. I was just reading in our Slack channel about your object-oriented D&D gameplay. So tell us a little bit about your tech bona fides.
Yeah. Let's see. I've always been into tech. I started out as a musician. I think that blended me well into tech. So I tell my kids I started playing guitar and bass, but I learned how to play computers. So it's all kind of the same thing to me. Yeah, I got started early on the internet. At one point in time, there was 3 people in Marin County on the internet. It was Autodesk, Lucasfilms, and my living room. But yeah, I mean, I have fun. So I've done all kinds of things. I've done video games. I worked for Broadband Software for 10 years. I did online trading. And I've kind of found my home in cybersecurity. I've been doing it for about 35 years now. It was a very different thing when it all got started, but today it is what it is. We're basically defending against nation state. We're defending against criminals. It was a very different thing when it started. When it first started, it was just people enjoying technology, frankly. So yeah, just kind of rolling with the punches here.
Very cool. I love how you describe that too, like playing computers. Like it's like a game. That's really awesome. So like, what do you think kind of sums up 2024 before we jump into some future predictions?
um, Man, I think we're all trying to get our heads around the wave that is generative AI and how it's kind of rolling through every single department, including IT, but not just IT. There's a lot of things that it's disrupting. Um, the idea of data privacy, intellectual property, all of those things. It's just a real interesting time to be alive right now. I think it's as transformative as when the internet, kind of washed across our lives and our businesses.
I gotcha. Very cool. Well, what do you think 2025 holds for the threats that we might encounter?
There are certain trends that I think have begun in 2024. Like we're going to see a lot more uh, AI being used for not only attackers but defenders. I think the wild card still is what's going to happen with quantum. Um, Quantum computing is it's not going to be linear. It's just going to happen, and then it's going to basically disrupt everyone.
Kind of
uh,
like the subscription base of OpenAI of ChatGPT when it
yeah,
launched. It just goes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, there are other things that I think are on the rise just because of the change in how we work. Hybrid work and this and that. I think the norm now is more of a zero trust architecture versus that inside outside that we may have become familiar with over the legacy years. So now you basically have to assume that you're connected on a hostile network, and the question is, what can you trust? And identity becomes a lot more important than it was before. Um, Data privacy, I think, is going to become possibly a competitive edge. I think consumers are really going to want and demand that companies be better custodians of their data, since there's a lot of it being used out there. So yeah, I think some trends are not really surprising. It's just the quantum one. I think is the bet. Nobody knows when that's going to come, but when it does come, I think it'll come as a real tsunami.
It's like, yeah, little by little and then all at once.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a very scary world. Quantum computing, like we don't even really know what that entails. Like what would it be capable of?
Yeah.
Especially when you like throw AI stuff into that system.
Yeah. I mean, you did ask about threats, and if we're talking about novel threats, it's hard to say novel because novel to whom, right? The people doing deep fake technology, it's certainly not novel to them. They're expert at this point. But we are going to 2025. I think is going to really try our human senses. I don't think. I think we're going to have to question what we see and what we hear, which wasn't something we really did back in, let's say, 2022, 2023. So I think that one is going to be a little more net new. Um, we're going to be challenged, really.
Yeah, it's like there's a difference between taking someone's opinion perhaps as like a grain of salt versus someone with authority saying something that is wild and it wasn't even that person actually.
Well, and I've always said too, it's very socially awkward, at least at first. Like, if my wife calls and says, "Hey, I just bounced a check. Can you please transfer some money?" And on the phone, or even via maybe some kind of video conferencing, it looks and sounds like her. I mean, the minute I start questioning her, it's like, well, we might get into an argument here. It's a little socially awkward, but I think
You're like, what was the name of our first pet?
she'd be like, "Why are you so
What's your mother's
irritated?
maiden name?
Yeah, why are you being so irritating right now?" Yeah. So I do think that's going to be weird, both in our personal lives and in our professional lives.
Yeah, is this the year that like PGP, like actual key sharing, comes into play for any type of communication? Like everything needs a key now.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that sounds like a management nightmare to me, but we're going to have some kind of countermeasure. It might be as simple as, like you said, just some human knowledge that hasn't been, let's say, exposed digitally to the machines. I mean, it starts to sound a little Terminator, but hey, whatever. Let's roll with it.
Well, talking about those countermeasures, what do you think like we both work at DNSFilter and we are strategizing to prevent such things. So what do you think that companies in the cybersecurity landscape are going to be focused on in the coming years?
I think given the tempo um, of how things change, I think the tempo. I don't know if you feel this, but I kind of feel like the tempo in 2023 and 2024, things are just getting faster. Attacks are moving not at human scale, machine scale. I think that it is no longer optional to not consider the speed by which we move, both business wise and defense wise. So I think there's a sense of like speed and agility that I think we're going to have to achieve. We have the capability now. A while back it was kind of optional whether you considered infrastructure as code. It was maybe optional that you consider some level of automation. I don't think that's optional anymore. I think because of the tempo and the way things are changing, it's almost like the slow will be eaten. Back to some
Yeah.
natural principle there. I also think that if you look at I often use a thing called the OODA loop to kind of model conflict. So maybe a quick aside there. So this guy John Boyd invented this concept called the OODA loop. It stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. And his theory was that in conflict, he was a fighter pilot. In conflict, if you can turn your OODA loop faster than your adversary, you will not only disorient them, but you will have the advantage in conflict. And I think that the first two, the observation and orientation, for a long time we could afford to do that at, again, human scale. I think with AI and everything else, I really do think that, again, the tempo by which your adversary is moving, it's really no longer an option for you to not consider machines and not consider a generative AI or some kind of machine assisted observation and orientation. There's just too much data, honestly, to really observe in a horizontal manner, holistically.
Yeah, that word tempo, I think, is really nails it. Because like I've seen the last year or two, just my proficiency and, maybe not the quality necessary of my output, but the volume is just like 10x probably. Just because I've, been making attempts to use these new generative AI tools to do more things. And like it does work. And that OODA loop is really interesting because it made me think of like if we have a decision to make here at my house, like my wife, and I want to go to dinner or whatever. Like I am the type that I will make the decision like super fast, even though it is potentially incorrect. Whereas she will like to research and make an educated decision on what it is. Where I and I do this all the time. I just feel like make a decision, fail fast, like because that's the environment that I'm in.
Yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
talk about AI a little more in depth. So we've kind of talked about it in every kind of question topic we've been having. So do you think we're kind of approaching the end of traditional IT, like AI specifically in IT roles? Do you think we are coming to like a precipice where things will change drastically?
I have some really strong theories here just because I've been doing it for so long. I think, does it mark a punctuation as great as, moving from mainframe to distributed systems, like moving from traditional IT to sort of public cloud? Like all of these things mark punctuality in my life in IT that was big. I mean, it was really big. And you could see all the, first it starts with fear and real strict governance because you really don't know what's happening. But as you get more familiar with the technology and you get more safeguards and you get more benefits and results, you kind of loosen up. And I mean, think of where, public cloud usage was back 10 years ago. People were just like, oh, no way am I putting that on the internet. And now basically almost all business runs there, right? So I think we'll see the same thing with generative AI. I think we'll see it wash over and really become an embedded part. Now, the thing that is interesting to me is what it's doing to us almost on the individual level. I do think that 2025, I would say it's even starting now, but in 2025, I call it the rise of the generalist. We've been taught to, basically, if you're going to do anything well, you have to go really deep. You have to have 10,000 hours in it. And you really have to kind of focus on this one thing at the expense of all these other disciplines, right? You can't be somebody who's really great at music and computer science and philosophy and engineering and like all of these things, because frankly, the theory is you don't have enough time to do that. But I really do think that the value in being human is to actually have a broad sense of multiple disciplines and to use generative AI to go deep.
Yeah.
Um, so that's I think is going to really change the way we do IT, because even the way IT or departments are set up, they're so siloed, right? And I think here's an opportunity for you to be more of a generalist and operate more horizontally across the company with generative AI than if you were to just be focused on your silo and really go deep.
Yeah, and because generative AI, it already has the 10,000 hours of experience and education in most disciplines. It's like,
It's passing the exams as if
right.
I'm better than the humans are. So, let it go really, really deep, maybe 20,000 hours, but we are at that point where I think that the people that know how to use the tools are going to be able to operate horizontally in ways that only committees were able to function, but they'll be able to function at the speed of an individual with the broad perspective of the committee, which is just magic.
So AI, the way it is today, generative AI, and I'll probably say AI a bunch, but I mean generative AI. um, it's basically like an average of human knowledge that's online. It's not anything spectacular. It can't currently create its own unique thoughts. It can perhaps uh, combine and triage things together that do result in something that seems new or novel, but it would be more likely that we come up with the new novel approaches with the aid of AI. So what in your opinion, what's the balance of human and AI decision making, like when they're used together? Like, let's start with like a percentage, like 50% human, 50% gen AI. Like, what do you think there?
Yeah, I think it depends on the task. I'm always interacting with it in kind of a different role. Sometimes it might be the co-creator of something creative. It might be the strategist. I may be interfacing it with something strategic where I'm asking it to take the perspective of multiple um, personas, and that's actually helpful to me. And then there's just how about you just do something mundane, just take it off my plate, build a table, um, write some code, do something that frankly is very mechanical. It just depends on what you need it. Now, I want to go back to something you said before because I truly believe that it is the human boundaries of cognition that is truly holding back the AI. There's multiple instances where where the human was taken out of the equation, and the AI was collaborating with other AIs, and they started to develop languages and communication that the humans basically weren't participating in. So if in that scenario, we are actually more of the governor and the speed bump in this whole evolution than the
Mm.
AI is. So I just want to park that there
And
because, yeah,
yeah, that that is interesting. It's like they're creating a language, but were they trying to create their own language so that we could not understand? Like,
well,
that's
no,
really
no,
scary.
it's happened, and that's what I'm saying, right? I mean, there is even that phenomenon with children that they will over time develop their own language together, independent of society.
Hmm.
What I'm saying is that evolutionary trait can exist in AI if AI were to only be operating with other AIs. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Perhaps it's
help
like
me.
a shorthand of sorts. They're not necessarily malicious. Like I have a
It could
3-year-old, and
be.
he's,
Hmm.
he has friends at like his preschool, and they will say the weirdest things, but they understand what, it's like almost like noises, like animal
Yeah.
sounds. Or
Right.
maybe the
Right.
AI, like a court recorder, is just using shorthand to get there faster.
Right.
Hopefully,
Right.
like brain.
Right. No, it's just again, we live in very interesting times here.
So actually, I have a few questions kind of outlined. My next question is actually the dystopian versus utopian future of AI, Gen AI in our world. Do you think things look good? The sky is bright, or are we in for the Matrix?
Oh man. So I gotta hope that that it's for good, right? I mean, with all technology, technology to date doesn't really pick sides. The chef knife could be the murder weapon. The gunpowder could be used for celebration or for or for wartime. So, over time, or at the 3D printer could print a heart valve, and it could print
Firearm.
a gun. Yeah, exactly. So I think we're gonna come upon that with AI. The thing that's different possibly with the AI is that it's operating at a cognitive level with us, or at least appears to be. And so you know, I think the same thing's going to happen, but maybe in a different way, which is the people who want to use it for evil will try and do that, and the ones that want to do for common good will do that. And
Yeah.
I just gotta hope that we're building the world a better place. That's
Yeah.
that's
At
that's at
least that
least
means the humans, even the bad ones, are still the conductors of this technology, and the technology itself is not trying to harm us.
yeah, that's right. Well, and again, I just don't know, because the idea of villain and hero is oftentimes in the eye of the beholder.
Exactly.
To whom, yeah.
Exactly. Like which task, just like you said a moment ago about, which percent of humanity versus AI goes together. But anyway, so AI is a huge topic for 2025. It will be for the rest of our lives, I imagine. Or at some point, it may just be part of the fabric of the world. So we won't have to talk about it. But right now, it's new and it's concerning in ways and helpful in others. But I want to talk about one of a previous transformation, the move to the cloud. So, and you actually brought this up earlier. There was, a move to the cloud, and a lot of companies were kind of scared, I guess would be, for lack of a better term. I actually saw, are you familiar with DHH, David Hannemeyer Hansen, the
Mm.
from 37 Signals? They
Oh
created
yeah,
a
I do know
Basecamp.
that. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so he created Basecamp. He was telling the story of the White House called them and said, "Hey, we'd like to use Basecamp, but we want to self-host it because we're the government and we can't put our data on your cloud or whatever." So there's been this pushback against your data on someone else's computers, which is totally understandable, certainly understandable for a government. But I feel like this is still a transition in progress. Like, no, not everyone is using the cloud in the way that it was meant to. I'm pretty sure you have thoughts about that too. Why don't you tell us?
Yeah. I mean, we've definitely seen it play out. Um, the people that were cloud first and the people that were cloud last. um, the people that were cloud last, I think, were just ineffective in articulating their requirements. It wasn't that they didn't want to be cloud first; it's just that they had different requirements than the others. And I think we've seen that play out, because we have now more industry specific clouds
Mm-hmm.
that have met those needs. So I think that's a trend that has played out. I do think it's still evolving. There seems to be also a greater interoperability between clouds and even microarchitecture. We build applications to scale a lot differently than we did before. And again, a lot of tools have basically removed the friction to be hyper distributed. And I
Right.
think that really speaks to a greater interoperability between cloud services and clouds.
So
So
the cloud providers basically can meet those requirements of the cloud last folks because they can segment portions of their data centers or data centers themselves to different industries so that they're
Yeah.
like, I know they're still our computers, but they are just your data. You can have physical access. Like they finally figured out like the cloud generically is not for everyone.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I think we'll see the same with generative AI. I think we'll see some segmentation happen and some niche markets get served specifically because they have, industry specific needs.
Right. And a lot of the Gen AI tools we're using now are very generalists,
General,
like
yeah,
Chat
exactly.
GPT, like they're
Yeah.
very broad. But yeah, you
Hmm.
can easily train them, and even train some of the open source models to be very niche on something you need,
Hmm.
like maybe medical research, things like that. Like that will be a very exciting time.
Yeah, and it speaks to, I think, maybe in 2025 we'll see more applications with small language models versus the large language models. I think that's probably a good prediction too.
Yeah, good one. What about the oldest technology of the internet, DNS itself, which is where we work and the layer that we try to protect at DNSFilter. I said try, but I mean, we do a really good job of it. If you haven't checked us out yet, you should. But DNS is like, was made in like the 60s. It's had a few security protocols kind of tacked on. But what do you think happens to DNS in the next year or maybe next decade? Because it's a very slow moving technology.
Yeah, it's slow, but it's so fundamental that I think it's a really it's a good thing to watch trend wise. Its first job was just to scale, and I think it probably showed us one of the best decentralized model um, to decentralize the administration of, let's say, namespace. Right, I think it did that very early on. I think the next battle that it had to fight was to be resistant to attack. The security aspects of um, cryptography getting into
Hmm.
DNS, and that again, when it started, it really wasn't a need, but that need grew and it met that need. So I think that's another trend we can watch. The other one is just the massive growth of public cloud technology, all the microarchitectures, all the Internet of Things. Like there just are more IP address, and that therefore there's actually much more of a namespace, particularly as we cover the address space of IPv6, where DNS is mandatory. Frankly, nobody's going to be typing in from memory IPv6 addresses here and there. So I think those things kind of speak to where we came from and maybe point to some of the trends. I think the new trend that everybody's dealing with is it's sort of these two counters between security intelligence and performing cybersecurity because of the intelligence you get from DNS, and the other side of that is privacy, right? And
Yeah.
and the question is private to whom? Really a great question. Um, but those two kind of work at odds with each other because when you make something opaque, you have to take it out of your observational domain. So it's no longer in your OODA loop. It's not observable anymore. Um, you can make inferences about it, but frankly, it's not directly inspected, right? Um, so again, the privacy people are pushing for things like DNS over HTTP, and we see DNS moving closer to the application. So maybe to summarize it, I think the namespace and the DNS function moves closer to applications than where it
Hmm.
exists now in the network. I think that privacy becomes something first class that needs to be addressed. And when privacy grows, the security intelligence side of it has to evolve because we have to figure out different ways to observe behavior. I mean,
Hmm.
think about this. I mean, we see 130 billion requests per day. Like if there's a corpus of data that describes the way people are behaving on the internet, DNS is one of them. So
The one.
yeah, so it actually is a great corpus of data to train on, to do AI stuff with. But again, there's a lot of decentralization and censorship issues and privacy issues that we really do need to address head on.
So I think you left out, you were kind of going through your checklist at the end there, and I think you left out year of IPv6. Did I hear that? It's finally going to happen.
Yeah, it is happening. It's just happening in a way that isn't that spectacular. Like nobody's going to be throwing a party. Probably, your compute today will probably use more than 50% of V6 addresses than V4 out of pure necessity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's just a fact. Like there's no celebration for that. It's just going to kind of sneak up on us. And pretty soon, again, out of necessity, just because we need more addresses, um, we have long since run out of V4 addresses. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think
Well, the
2025, 2026 is just more V6.
necessity, yeah.
Hmm.
And it's that everything being directly addressable because there are enough addresses really helps DNS because as we know, like I actually have the shirt on right now. It's not DNS. It's always DNS is what breaks your network. But DNS is hard because we had some imposed restrictions on ourselves because we didn't have the technology to do it. But now we do. IPv6, one of the pitfalls is having, NAT translation and all that, everything behind a router. But if everything is directly addressable by the internet, it definitely makes DNS management, not the cybersecurity part necessarily, but the actual management of DNS on your network a lot easier. I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in design, there's always this concept of the underlay versus the overlay. You want the overlay to sort of face the application. You want a nice little abstraction of the overlay. DNS truly is a great overlay to all the numbers that exist that run the internet, right? And it's sort of the paved road. Um, people understand DNS. People don't understand a sequence of decimals separated by periods.
Yeah, it's
So
not very human friendly.
well, there's just no. It's really hard to get a bunch of semantics attached to anything other than 127.0.0.1. That's the hero of address space, right? That's
What
home.
do you think? What do you think the future of DNS security looks like? Is it still categorizing domains as they come online and recategorizing them frequently? What do you think DNS security looks like?
Yeah, and well, that I think is just a pattern that faces all of scalability, which is there's just too many members to the set. So you have to find set criteria to compute the members to a set. The sets are meaningful to somebody, and frankly, nobody's got time or the staff to put all the members to the set or maintain those sets. So I think categorization is really kind of a first class utility to building policy and everything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just everybody building policy, frankly, does not have the time to manage the membership of the sets. And so I think that's kind of a first class value of somebody who is doing DNS protection. Whether that is that category is threat, whether that is online shopping, political affiliation, whatever it is, no one's got time to look at 130 billion requests and put them in particular categories.
So this just came to me, Carl. If you're listening, pay attention. So the so you know how everyone is like sprinkling AI into their products. Well, DNSFilter, we've kind of had AI more like machine learning since like 2015, categorizing domains. But there was like, well, we don't need to add AI into our product because whatever. But in reality, the categories that DNSFilter has are flattened a little bit to make it easier to manage. There's way more categories that we actually use on each domain. but in the interface and in our APIs and stuff, we kind of flatten them a little bit. However, if you could tell AI, for example, your threat profile, the type of industry you're trying to protect, it could use the much larger categorization set and do a more fine-tuned policy based on your needs and crunching more data than you can as a human. So just an idea, guy here. You can run with that.
Yeah.
How I'm curious, you mentioned data privacy a lot. Do you think that IT leaders are going to have to do things differently, or are they kind of already doing them?
Yeah, I think 2025 is the year where we really need to start asking the question, not just data privacy, but privacy to whom. I think we have an opportunity for us not only to be more accurate in the broader policies, but I think I think the actual data privacy can really come down to the individual, you know, and having some kind of emphasis on user consent and real proactive compliance measures, which I don't think really happen today. What happens today, or at least historically, is policymakers, whether they understand the technology or not, they actually make policy, and that either sticks or doesn't stick. And so it's this sort of trial and error thing that a lot of bad things have to happen for that policy to get refined. I think we have an opportunity to really try and get in front of that. Maybe some kind of privacy by design principle, or so. I do think we're going to see a lot change in privacy, which is we'll be able to say, privacy means this to an individual, privacy means this to a community. Right now, there's just too much policy that is, let's call it the default route. It's supposed to fit everyone, and frankly, I just don't see that lasting. Or if it does, it's a very small policy that is universal.
Gotcha. And I was just going to ask you if you have any, like a closing statement of sorts. And that sounded really good, but do you want to add anything to like other things that we should expect to see in the future coming up?
Not really. I mean, just have fun with it. I mean, it's one of those things where I really do think we're going to have to kind of check our ego at the door when we're dealing with generative AI, particularly with AI becoming so advanced. Um, we're going to have to think of it as more of a thought partner than a threat. And for those who do truly embrace it, I think the future is really bright. Those who fight it, I don't really have good news for those people.
The AI is the future.
It
Well,
sounds, yeah, it sounds kind of stupid, but once so here's my, if you really are a critic to AI, I would only ask that you get your hands as dirty as you can in it and experience it for yourself,
mhm.
because it's kind of like diet, which is I can tell you what I eat and what I like, but honestly it's you being an expert in yourself, right? Because when you might be able to eat 9 eggs a day and not have high cholesterol. So I would say that the AI journey honestly is a personal one. I can tell you how excited I am, but they are for personal reasons, and how effective it is for me in my daily life, in work and business. But you're going to have your own story, so I would encourage people to write their own story.
I totally agree with that. We've had conversations here at DNSFilter about AI, and a lot of people are a little nervous to use it, which, with good reason. There's certain things that it can do that we don't fully understand. We certainly don't want to put any proprietary data in there. But like TK said, like getting your hands dirty, it's really, with safeguards in place, getting your
Yeah.
hands dirty is really the easiest, fastest way to learn
Yeah.
AI
True.
specifically.
True.
Well, TK, thank you for joining me on the episode. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.